Good. Thanks, Nathaniel.
Sure.
All right. Let me take a look at our agenda here real quick. Welcome to the October 26th SEQP and many other events Zoom call. Couple things I wanted to cover today. Just our Hamside Google group. I'll say it now. I think we're up to 992 members. We've gained probably over 150 or more since this time last year. So we're tickling the 1,000 mark for the Hamside Google group. So we can pop some champagne corks or something when that happens. It'll probably be later this week. We've been averaging 2 or 3 or 4 new people a day, I think.
I'm approving 3 more right
nice.
now.
Yeah, we might be there. Who knows?
We are at 995.
Whoa. Okay. We are getting close. Good. Good. I think the grape group's up to about 184. That group's a little more focused, but there's a lot of people there, like all the groups, willing to jump in and help. So that's another good one. For my part, the weather's been so nice here. It's been hard to stay in the house and get anything done. Been doing a lot of stuff outside before the weather turns south. But anyhow, I did spend today updating all the media hits, basically since about the 1st of October. And I also put an item in the news, a news article on the front page of the Hamside site, so that the media hits were there. I'm not sure a lot of people knew about them, but as I said in the posting there, maybe somebody wants to explain what Hamside is all about in the 30 seconds or 2 minutes or so or less. And those media hits, there's a lot of good YouTube videos from NASA, local radio stations, TV stations, so on and so forth. So hopefully we have to get some people go over there, use some of those links, and get some good out of them. One of the things too I wanted to talk about today is we need to, I think, start obviously planning for April 8th. We pretty much know how to run the events, I think, but it's still worth talking about what we may or may not want to change. Real briefly, I'll just go over a couple of things and we can be done with the agenda. We're up to about 211 logs for the SEQP. About 72 in the Gladstone Signal Spotting Challenge, and similar number with emails and stuff coming in. One of the things I need to do this weekend is look at downloading RBN data. Adarsh, who's been working on the scoring code a little bit, I've sent him some sample logs, and he asked me for some info from the RBN. So Philip gave me access, but I've got to see what's involved in doing that.
Scoring is misspelled.
Okay, whoops, scoring. Yeah, there you go. That's the Scandinavian version, maybe.
I got a quick question about logs.
Sure.
I did Whisper, which I know is automatic recording, but is it useful to send the log as well?
I don't know that we would, if it was already past the Whisper net, I think the data will already be there.
Okay, that's why I was asking, because I did check and it's on WhisperNet.
Okay, good, good.
And I did submit the entry, so it's there.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks for submitting that. I know Michael Black had a post a couple of days. He's done a couple of downloads and is very familiar with how to get that data. So I need some help. I can turn to him. I'm not too worried about that. At the end, see how time goes. I need some help with Zenodo. I saw some very confusing things there the last couple of days when I've been poking around in there a little bit, and we'll see if we get time to cover the upcoming NASA event that a couple of us are going to. So anyhow, let me shut that off. So are there any, has anybody heard any scuttlebutt or any, based on personal experience or something like that, things that they would change or want to do differently from the SEQP event, the signal spotting stuff and that sort of thing? I figure we'd start with ourselves and see what we've learned from our own experience, and take any notes if there's things we might want to change. I think things went pretty smoothly from my point of view, but like I say, I've still got to get into the scoring and all that. We've got a lot of work to do. Silence is golden.
Ed sent out a list, right, of suggestions?
Yeah, I had a couple that I sent to Gary and to Nathaniel. I mean, just some observations that I had. Obviously, the storytelling is going to be a little different. Going into the April event than it was. I mean, obviously, in terms of talking about Eclipse, but also, why this one is particularly important, and also the fact that it's a Monday and we don't have the advantage of a big contest audience on the weekends. I mean, that would be one. Obviously, another question that I heard, if you had done a number of meetings, was the fact that we don't have a flyer or anything that's really on paper to be able to, sort of leave our message. We've got our calling card, our business card, which I think is a really great idea. But I think a lot of people at, meetings anticipate that there's something that we might have as a flyer. So we might want to rework, some of the stuff that we really want to have as critical as a new flyer for April, and put it up as a PDF, on the site, so that, people can sort of just download it. And if they've got a meeting, they can grab it and use it that way. I guess what else did I have? I guess also maybe just, it says, particularly now with close to 1,000 people on our list, is maybe just, and I'm willing to take this on if I can get some help, is maybe just a short monthly newsletter, that, just sort of gets the word across of what we need, keeps us up to speed, FAQs, questions like how do I submit a log, that type of thing, I think, becomes important. And, but again, I'm willing to take it on, if anybody else is willing to help me out on it. Maybe we just, take some, topical events, as we move, say, January, February, March into April. And the other piece too, I think, is just, maybe one or two others. It's just how we use sort of our speakers, is maybe, put together, not only in terms of people who are asking us for presentations as we solicit, through our e-letters, but also maybe setting up a formalized speaker bureau that not only, outlives us from now till April, but also maybe past that, in terms of talking about ionospheric science and citizen science, and also what HAMSci does. So maybe, the creation of a core, of a number of us who can, be speakers, professional side, marketing side, that type of piece. And then obviously in the short run, and Bill KATE mentioned it last week, is just sort of, in all the noise that we had with PA QSO party, et cetera, is that, we were not necessarily the largest voice, but what do we do, in terms of reaching out to contest clubs, for the April event? And I've got a contest club list that we use, but we need to, I think, and obviously maybe I'm blaming myself here, but, maybe it just falls that we need to do a little bit more communication to those contest clubs and get them to play, because obviously, they'll be the more active people in terms of submitting logs as well. So, and also just, sort of how we use our social media is that we have a little bit longer range plan, in terms of what we want to do between now and April. So just so that we're not necessarily groping for targets as we get closer, that we've got a real, really good plan to do that. So anyway, that's, Nathaniel, thanks. I mean, that's, sort of my short take, in terms of what, just in terms of ideas.
Thank you. Yeah, I have your list that you wrote up very nicely up here on the screen. I can share it with the group if you like. I think they're all very good suggestions.
Yeah, I guess, I did forget one other. I just missing. I see Nick is on the call too. Is just, I think he mentioned last week that I think he sees like maybe a core of about 12 or 13 people. Is what do we need to do, sort of, to do a little bit more outreach, so that, if we had a core of about 25 to 30 good SWLs / medium weight DXers that we can count on early to be participative in the event. So, and that's something that I think, probably he and I could take offline in terms of what we need to do, and anyone else who's interested.
No, I agree with Nathaniel. These are all very good points, Ed. And I think what we can do the next couple of meetings is go through them and expand on them a little bit. When we talk about a flyer, let's throw some ideas out, decide what we would want to put, if it's a single 8.5 by 11, or if it's two-sided or something like that. What are the points we think we'd want to cover? And then with that kind of framework, I can work on putting something together.
It's great. Yeah. And a graphic artist as well, which is always I don't have that resource. So. Yeah.
True. That's true too. Yeah. That's true too. Yeah.
And certainly with the graphic artist, I can't use it all the time, but as you know, sometimes I've been able to get the university to help out with some of those things.
Yeah.
Some students are willing to do that. We can, of course, ask for help on the listserv as well. There might be people who have those talents and want to donate them. There's also a AI these days also. I know my Adobe Creative Cloud subscription includes a generative AI thing where you can type in things and it gives you different pictures. So there's a number of options there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's funny. We don't have time to go through it, but I was in there using Bard, which I think is that Microsoft AI search tool. And I
Mhm.
searched on TIDs and it came back with uh, I don't know. It was a lot of what it came back with. I tried looking up and searching on a Google Scholar and none of it apparently is reality. Um, whatever. That was kind of funny. Um, So on the topics, I mean, one of the things I've wondered about, is kind of a branding and a PR thing for sure. I mean, we've gotten a fair amount of exposure. We've tried very hard in the last 6 or 7 years to teach people what HAMSI is and what it's all about. But I'm not sure yet if there's if when people hear HAMSI, do they think of ionospheric research or what do they think of? And I know HAMSI is bigger than just ionospheric
Right.
research. There's the magnetometer projects and other things and stuff. But would it be useful or would it be helpful? Would it make sense to try to drive a specific message and work toward having a message? So when people hear HAMSI, they think of either A or B or C.
Yep.
Well, if you look right on our website, we have the three objectives of HAMSI are right there. So I think that's what people should think of.
To play devil's advocate, are those, maybe we should look at them real quick. I'll pop them up there. Are those too long? Or are they a little too much, I guess, for people uh, to grab onto? Let's see.
Well, I think if they are too long, I think they do at least they hold our core mission.
Right.
So if we're trying to figure out what message do we want to get out, I think this is a message. If we figure out how to make it shorter, that's great. But that's the core mission right there.
Yep.
So if we were to develop a flyer for, as Ed was pointing out, these are probably the three, if you want to call them bullets or images or whatever we'd want to have at the top. So people say, okay, HAMSI, we associated with these three things, and then move on below that to whatever particular activity or event is coming up, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it should be short and sweet and general so that no matter what comes up, we can tack it on there somewhere.
Yep.
You can have examples, it's like I've been pushing the phrase for amateur radio, science service skill or some, variation on that. And it's punchy, people remember it. And then when they say, what do you mean by that? Then you have an opportunity to dig in and start giving them the fire hose. But if you start with the fire hose, they kind of laugh nervously and back away carefully, and it can be too much.
Yep. And also thinking just longer term, because I mean, we're sort of asking for participation regarding a specific event, but going forward, it's the long-term mission that we really need to be able to,
Right.
drive a message through so that it's clear.
Yeah, it'd be great to say, hey, here's HAMSI's long-term vision, and this is how this activity promotes it.
That's correct.
Or furthers it or whatever.
Yep.
So the other thing I'm thinking about that all makes a lot of sense is we've got the ability, if you do the short, sweet, 3 points, brevity is important. You put a QR code on there, people can scan that, go right to the website and learn the longer story too.
Yep.
And I know from my little bit of experience, but all the presentations I did and then the emails and feedback from the articles in the magazines is that it seems fairly clear cut, but not sharply defined between people that respond that have a background, a science background, an engineering background, and then those that are just ham radio operators and do not have the background. And I really found that I was dealing with two classes or groups or whatever is the appropriate word that that I just thought it was interesting. I didn't realize how clearly defined or how I'm groping for words. I apologize, but I didn't realize how sharp that focus would be between the two different groups. One group would ask me a question and I would say, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And the other group, I was able to answer. And it was pretty clear the two different backgrounds, education, whatever word you want to use, but the interest was there for all of them.
Yeah, that's a good point. And well, to get back to Ward's point too, and this just fell out of my head, and I don't know if this means anything, but it might be a point to use maybe one session in Cleveland that talks a little bit like life beyond the eclipse for Hamsci. You know, it's to sort of get everybody focused, sort of like what's the next steps, that type of thing. So we're all sort of walking away with a mission. Okay, and you know, sort of have at least some beginning verbiage that we can carry on beyond April 8th. So just a thought. So
And that would be an important part of presentations that we do between now and April, is to, as you're saying, is to expand that vision. And Ward, Arnie in 6HC did a presentation to our club last week and had some really nice pictures of you on the expedition. I think it was Curie Island, with a blanket over your head and 4 days of going without sleep. And I won't share them, but they were truly inspiring. I'll be quiet.
That was an interesting trip. After a few days, everything going in and out of you is the same temperature.
Yeah.
And we couldn't see the radio displays because of the sun was so bright off the white coral sand. It was really kind of interesting. You'll learn a lot on these things. We talked a little bit about this topic this morning in the great teleconference about now what. You know, it's like, so we had this eclipse and we measured a bunch of stuff with the grape. Well, now what? So,
well, now wait a minute. I don't know why this now what is coming up, because that's not the whole of it. I mean, Nathaniel's always been into the traveling ionospheric disturbances. This is an ongoing research topic. We should have that very prominent.
yeah, there's some, well, there's a lot of people that have very short term, hey, we had an event and we measured the event. Okay, and how do you connect that to these long-term programs? I think that's up for discussion, but we were talking about, well, we want to keep the grapes on the air so that they can support this kind of long-term research.
Yeah, what I'm thinking, Nathaniel, is there a way to graphically represent the data that we're getting, so that people can actually see these waves that we're trying to study?
We are working on it. Yeah, and I mean, I send out some of that already, but you know, we definitely have to do more of that analysis and more of that visualization.
I mean, similar to what the TEC plots are doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can see the waves quite nicely the way they've been presenting it. I wonder if there's some way we could parallel that.
Yeah. Well, we do show that already. I mean, even in the what is it? Even in the Eclipse data that we just got, where you look at the grape data, you can see all these waves going all through the night and things like that. And
right,
you know,
but we haven't tied it all together to actually.
And that's
the,
that's what we're working on.
Right.
I think one of the things, and this is a challenge that I've been thinking of a lot, is how do we ham radio operators are very good at engineering, and they're very good at making observations, because most of ham radio operators know about putting stations together, building equipment, getting on the air. But I don't know that ham radio really adequately prepares people for the scientific process of, okay, now that you've had the event, what do you do? I think maybe, and so something I'd like to try to figure out, how do we get people to go and take the data that we've collected and try to write, make presentations or write scientific papers and actually have them be meaningful. And that's, how do we get people to do that correctly? Because that takes a lot of effort and work. And I'm not sure, what the absolute best way forward is beyond what we've already been doing. And I'm open to ideas.
And I could be wrong, but I'm also thinking that if we, because when I did the presentations and the other things, for a lot of people, this was the first time that they knew what ham sci was, towards point that they had heard of the term, but I would get, I mean, just many times they say, oh, now I really understand what ham sci is. And they would not take the time to go to the website. And their thinking was, you know, Dave, you were alluding, but their thinking was kind of like, so we did the Eclipse. And I would try to say, well, this is just part of what we're doing. And so I think as we do these things and show this material, that it's important to realize that for those that are not the scientists in the other group, but that we're trying to get their help on a continuing basis, that they are able to understand that this is a project going on, and maybe even have a split level or information that is appropriate for those without the science background and for those with, so that we can appeal to both groups and bring them along. And again, maybe I'm wrong. I'm lucky because I have you folks as mentors, and I can always say, hey, I have no clue what in the heck this is. And then I have people here so generous with their time that go, Ron, now, no, everybody has been so nice, but I feel like I kind of represent that other group that I would really like to keep them involved, but I'm not sure at what level the information as we bring it out will do it for them. All right, I'll go back in my corner and be quiet.
No, that was very good input, Ron. And a couple of things I'll let the group in on that people may or may not be aware of. We had a request from Rich Moses at CQ for an article, kind of, for lack of a better term, wrapping up the SCQP in those events. And that's easier said than done. It's because it's very early. That's what we're discussing here. The science part can take a very long time. But one of the ideas that Nathaniel threw out, and Ed and I both grabbed onto, is maybe we need an article explaining a little bit more about what citizen science is and how it works.
Yep.
To help that understanding along. So maybe what I need, and I offered to write that unless somebody else wants to give it a shot, but maybe it's time to kind of to outline that. Use that outline can help us develop these flyers, because I'm thinking we probably don't have a lot of Hamfest activity between now and the end of the year, because believe it or not, in a few weeks it's gonna be Thanksgiving, and then it's gonna be Christmas and Ramadan and all the Jewish holidays and so on and so forth. So until the first of the year, we've probably got a little bit of a lull in a lot of those activities. A lot of ham clubs will be having their holiday dinners and whatnot. So it's a good time to kind of catch up and work on some of those things. And the ideas everybody's throwing out seem pretty good.
Mary
Can
Lou
I
has a
show a
point.
pic-
Mhm.
can I show a picture to Ron?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is inspirational and artistic and everything, and visual. I like visual stuff. So here's pictures of TIDs. So these were in the year 2021. One was in December and one was in October. And I just think they're beautiful. So this sort of waviness happens on the bottom layer of the ionosphere and on about a third of the days in a year. Not every day, but most of them are just perfectly flat across. And then every once in a while you see one of these really nice wobbles, and I think they're beautiful, and that's what we're studying. Okay.
And 1 year ago, I would have
Exactly.
had no clue what you were showing me. Now I do, but I will tell you this, 90%, I mean, I really feel like 90% of the people that I presented to and that responded to my articles and emailed me would have no clue what that is. And I don't think I'm over exaggerating or over whatever the word is by saying 90%, but the people I talk to, and there's got to be at least a few hundred in that group with all the
Right.
presentations.
Yeah. So I don't think anybody understands these sort of things.
Right. Well, it's
But
all in the
there's
presentation.
something interesting going on up
Yep.
in the sky.
And you catch their attention because you tell them this is affecting your propagation. This is affecting who you can make contacts with.
Oh yeah, that gets them, David. Every time you say something like that, and they're like, "Huh? Say what?"
Okay.
That's useful. If you compare the TID images you just showed, Mary Lou, against a smooth mirror-like bottom side ionosphere, I think people could see that difference, and the wheels would start turning in their heads, understanding that as the refraction points move and change and the heights change, that it's going to turn into muddled signals at the receiver, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Can we flip the question around a little bit? To I'm forced by the nature of my job to have to think about how do we use this data for science? Can we have some people that can think about how do we use the science for ham radio?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I'm pointing out how what we're looking at is studying propagation and how it affects, who you can make contacts with.
Yes, but how do we actually make that useful to someone in ham radio?
I would talk to somebody like Frank Donovan or Carl Lutzelschwab because they have a tremendous amount of practical HF communication experience, and especially these odd modes of propagation and things that involve 3D structures in the ionosphere. Like Frank was writing about some kind of interesting coupled TEP propagation on 6 meters down to the South Pacific and to the Indian Ocean. And so he's really into this stuff, and you get discussions about things like skew paths that bounce stuff off more or less a vertical structure in the ionosphere and help you keep a path open by using a more southerly azimuth. Or so, that's kind of a practical aspect of it. And anything that creates a structure in the ionosphere, we can bounce signals off of it, and maybe explaining some of these odd modes, like everybody refers to stuff as gray line when it's not really gray line. It happens around sunrise or sunset, but what causes the dawn enhancement? What causes these odd, long, dark path contacts, et cetera, et cetera. But I would start with Frank and Carl as very practical, very knowledgeable guys that are very connected to the DX HF community and could really, they know how to write for it. They know how what people are interested in. So that's where I'd start.
Good.
So
Yeah,
we've covered a lot of ground in the last 15 minutes, from creating a flyer, explaining what Hamside does. We've talked about what the future is at post eclipses, what other experiments and stuff. Nathaniel's mentioned how do we get some other people thinking about the results and initiating some research and whatnot. Ward's come up with a great idea, very practical, saying, okay, hams have seen phenomenon A, B, and C. Maybe some of us, when I say us, I'm saying the greater Hamside community, can suggest, okay, we'd like to understand this better. Then we can talk about what can our tools, our grapes, our tangerines, our clementines, ionosans, how can they help us maybe answer those questions? Is that the kind of, and then as Nathaniel said, maybe those questions can have very practical value to the ham radio community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we should try to figure out, how to give things useful back to the ham radio community.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just sort of thinking, because I mean, the marketing head says, when you're looking for something like this, I mean, it's really not your call sign that's most important. Most important radio station in the world is WIIFM. What's in it for me? Okay. And, from the standpoint of a ham, okay, how many presentations? I'm looking at Ron. How many did we do? Where there's still that gap. Okay, so sort of what's in it for me, that type of thing, and why I should participate. If we've got a really clear message, it should sell itself, not only for the eclipse but long past it, I would think. So
to temper that, you're right, Ed, but to play the devil's advocate again, I mean, some of the things I tried to bring up in our standard presentation was, one of the things we'd like to see is improved models of the ionosphere.
Yep.
Which for hams may lead to improved propagation predictions. So I thought that was something practical they might
absolutely.
glam onto. So
Yep, absolutely.
But I agree with that. I think we just have to make sure that somehow we keep that in focus. We keep that target up front and we don't lose it.
That's right.
So another thing, Gareth, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Afternoon, everybody.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm just at the bus stop, so you won't hear a bit of the Newark traffic here. So sorry for that.
That's okay. So I think one of the things I was talking about with Gareth is maybe having him and eventually our postdoc could go through the science topics that people, the Eclipse generated a lot of discussion on the HamSci listservs about science questions and topics. And I think it'd be really good to kind of distill that down and get that feedback back from the community and then see if there's any good science questions in there.
Did you want me to add on to that, Nathaniel? Or
Sure, go ahead, Gareth.
I think you said it pretty succinctly, because I mean, after the eclipse, it was just just a huge amount of emails and ideas, and very interesting ideas and plots getting thrown out there. So I think it's a really good idea to kind of, I think I volunteered to take on the task of trying to comb through it all and distill it down to a few maybe central ideas or central science views, and hopefully the postdoc can help do that as well, because it's just a rich variety of ideas in there that are really, really, I think, really good ideas. Unfortunately, there's only 24 hours in a day and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah. Gareth, when do you think you could come up with a presentation of what was on the HamSci listserv?
That is a good question. I would optimistically mid-November.
Yeah.
I have other things on the go at the moment, but before AGU would be a great
although if you were able to go through it for next week, do you think that would help us with writing the proposal too?
It would. It definitely would. Yeah, I could try and do it for next week, but
Okay.
I have some other pressing deadlines at the end of October related to tenure and some grants. So
yeah. But I think if we get this done, this is going to help us both move the science along here and also help us with that other November deadline we have.
No, exactly. You're right about that. And I think the sooner we do it, the better, or the sooner I do it, the better, because I mean, this is that feedback loop that's really critical for citizen science.
Right.
And we need to really respect that part of it. So.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be really good.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I think in terms of what happens next for HamSci. So I think the eclipses are really nice because they're these really big, crazy, flashy things. And so it's been really great for just this amazing amount of publicity and getting a lot of us, energized and going. I think the question is, do we need another really big flashy thing after that, or do we need to, or can we kind of hunker down on, we have all this data from the eclipse. Okay, now we need to actually spend the time understanding it. We have these traveling ionospheric disturbance problems. I think we need to try to really I think we need to try to move from some of the flashiness of just collecting things to try to figure out how to sell. How do we actually figure these things out? I think that's one part. I think another part is, we have this personal space weather station. I think we should really try to keep growing that network. I think, we want to get people that when they get grapes or they get magnetometers, we want to work that network out so that people really want to keep the lights on. We don't want them to just turn it on for a week and have it fizzle out. So I think we need to really figure out how to get feedback back to those people, make sure they keep it going, because all of that data together, I think, is going to be very valuable. So that, and then along with that, I think having some sort of a group that says, okay, how is this actually useful to ham radio? So we have some people that are focused on maybe how is this useful for science? Have other people take a look at it and really spend the time to say, okay, how do we actually use this personal space weather station data or this information for ham radio? I think doing that would be really useful. And then if we do want some more kind of like flashy far away things, I can tell you that I do have a grant proposal in with NJIT to do more stuff in Antarctica. If that got funded, I think doing some campaigns with Antarctica could be really interesting, doing some DX stuff. So there might be some opportunities there as well.
Yeah, I think people would find that exciting. Just like every time I read about HARP,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
a fantastic thing they've got going up north.
and we actually are in good relations with HARP too. At Hamvention every year I talk with Steve Floyd, who's the one of the engineers, like the design engineer of HARP, and I talk with sometimes I talk with Paul Bernhardt, who I think is still the chief scientist up there. And they're open to doing experiments with the ham sci community. So if we can figure out how to do more things with HARP, I probably if someone comes up with a good idea for an experiment, we can submit it and they will run HARP for us to do that experiment. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, how about HARP to South Pole?
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, as we've been talking, we've got current assets at South Pole that need to be switched over and certainly could be broadened out to more, shall we say, more broadband uses, which would include using amateur radio. Both directions. I know where there's a station at South Pole.
That's right.
Nathaniel, we might also try to make a small list of phenomena that hams use but don't understand, or know that exist but don't understand. Well, gray line, for example, and try to devise experiments that would generate data during a time when that event occurs.
Yeah.
And this is another area where Carl and Frank might be real useful. Say, if you could take a lot of data on, X, it would be interesting. And then, of course, the research community has taken enough notice of HamSci, I think, that you could say, there's going to be a XYZ, or we are trying to collect data on ABCs. Can you guys do that? And, that's the kind of thing that would be happening all the time.
Yeah. And, you say make a short list. I mean, we pretty much, we kind of have that already because we spent the last year and we're getting through the last throes of getting that reviews paper published.
Mm-hmm.
So the Frontiers reviews paper, and that has, it's divided up into sections of these different science topics, and it says what's been done, and there's a whole section on recommendations on what to do next.
Yeah.
So that's actually, we're this close to getting it published. We're just going through the proofs, still going through the proofs now, but we got through all of the approvals and other things. So as soon as we're happy with the proof, it's published.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge is holding the ham's attention long enough for the peer review process. You know, it's a hard thing. Peer review for hams is about a 5-minute argument at a club meeting, you know, and
Yep.
that's about it.
Yeah, and that comes back to what's in it for me, you know, that type of thing. So,
Yeah.
I like that cartoon that shows two physicists at the blackboard, you know, and it's covered with equations, and one of them has punched the other one in the eye, and he says, "That's it. That's peer review."
I mean, some thoughts I've had too is like, okay, I don't think we have to worry too much about keeping everyone's attention through this April. I think we'll be able to get everyone's attention through this April. But you know, there's gonna be a lot of data generated. Already there has been data generated. Nick Hall Patch, he's been collecting wideband with the AM system, and we're trying to get that posted somewhere. You know, we've talked about collecting wideband data of the ham radio bands during the Eclipse too. I've had this idea where, okay, well, if we just record all of this, I don't really have anyone set to look at it, but what if we post it somewhere and come up with some sort of, you know, analysis challenge? And, you know, we have people submit their papers, you know, to the ham sci workshop in 2025. And then, I don't know, we have some judges, you have some sort of a competition to get people to actually analyze it. Because there have to be other people out there, you know, who can do a decent job at analyzing this data and saying something, you know.
So we've had a really good discussion here tonight, and I know we can continue this on for the next couple of months easily, and we should. The question is, can I or should I write this up in some succinct fashion and bring it to the wider ham site community via the Google group or something? Because there's 20 of us here, and that means there's 960 other people on the Google group that aren't hearing what we're talking about. I'm trying to figure out how to draw those other people in, I guess is what I'm thinking.
yeah, and that was sort of my thought on a newsletter, because that would be a really good place to have that discussion. So,
Pardon me for asking, but do you mean Google Group or Groups.io?
Google group.
Google Groups.
What is it?
Nathaniel,
Yes.
this may already have been done. I'm new to getting into citizen science. What about the meteor showers like Perasois? I think I pronounced them right. PERS. It's got 110 per hour on August 12th, 24. What about something with studying of doing kind of like what we're doing on the solar thing, before, during, and after a major solar meteor shower? I know they got meteor scatter and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
is there anything that could be brought
I
out
think
of that?
honestly, it's very possible. I think what's going to happen with some of this too is we need to have some sort of mechanism for people forming their own groups. Like if there are people who are interested in this particular thing, some leader arises and says, let's find a group who does this. And, you know, we kind of have that now we've got a group doing the tangerine, we've got a group doing the grapes, we've got a group doing this. But we may have to have some more people from the ground up kind of doing things, and it can't all be from the top down, because we just can't. There's just not enough hours in the day, not enough people, and it's also not really if our goal is to reach as many people as possible, you don't just want one person at the top or a couple people at the top telling everyone what to do. You want, you know, somehow we have to let people be able to do. I guess there are a couple things. We want to let people do their own thing, but we also want to make sure we have it done in a structure so that people don't go off doing things that that really, I don't know, aren't. Sometimes people do experiments and they're not really scientifically well founded or well reviewed. Am I saying that correctly, Mary Lou?
Yeah.
Maybe actually, Mary Lou, you have years of experience with the pro am optical astronomers. Maybe at next Telecon you could talk to us a little bit more about what works in the is there something in the professional amateur astronomy community that works well that we're not doing that would be good for us to adopt?
Yeah, we should talk to Joe Patterson.
Okay.
There's also a brand new section on radio astronomy antennas in the new antenna book. And that was generated by a group of mostly hams, but not all hams, who are members of the Society for Amateur Radio Astronomy. And it's hard to tell whether that's amateur radio astronomy or amateur radio astronomy. It kind of blurs together. So there may be some interest in people looking at that and going, wow, I had no idea.
That's Tom Crowley's group, isn't it, Ward?
Yeah. So take a look at that stuff. That's a plug for buying an antenna book. And take a look
Waiting for my birthday month, which is coming right up.
There you go. And see if something pops out at you like pulsar detection or something.
Yeah, we need to get the whisper people to talk to the pulsar people. They're both really
Yeah,
tiny,
there's
tiny
pulsar detection. You can detect the rotation of the galaxy.
Yeah, I had a student do that last year. Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about some of that recently.
Well, I think there's a lot of things for us to think about and do.
So something I got today from Dale Gary. Have you folks seen his thing?
I did. He sent it to me this morning.
You should send it out to everybody. So he's at NJIT, or the California branch of NJIT at Owens Valley, and they have an array of 300 and some small dipole-ish antennas, and they got, for the very first time, pictures in radio of the annular eclipse. So could you show that? Yeah, there you go. Do you have?
Wow.
This is in radio.
I can put that in the chat.
So about
That's
60
pretty
megahertz.
slick.
Yeah.
Also sent me. Let's see. Dale Gary.
That is really cool.
And they're also part of the group that did the pictures of the black hole in M87.
And then this is a video that he just sent to me. I think. If it works. It worked this morning. It's doing something. There we go. Okay, so he writes that this is the raw imaging movie before the position shift corrections were made to remove ionospheric refraction. It really shows the refraction distortion of the images as the sun rose from a low elevation, possibly with an oscillatory component. The circle is the location of the sun in the absence of refraction, and the various panels are the different frequencies. You can clearly see the wavelength squared dependence of the refraction. I wonder if the eclipse itself may have led to more disturbance of the ionosphere than usual. Maybe some of your results from HamSci can be related to it. And Gareth, if you're still there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Maybe this is also, doing something in collaboration with OAVSA, in answering Dale's question, maybe that's good fodder for the proposal as well.
Yeah, that's a good thought. The interesting thing about these type of measurements is there's an instrument in Europe too called LOFI, and they deal with calibration. They do a lot of work to get rid of the refractive effect of the ionosphere. And what comes out of it is a very sensitive TEC or delta TEC measurement, and I think that's what we're observing there is like these very sensitive measurements on refraction. So, and I guess I didn't see everybody on this call on my reply to Dale, but there's still a persistent amount of controversy in space physics about whether or not an eclipse can actually generate TIDs or significant TIDs. And since that theory was proposed back in the 60s, there's been a number of eclipses, and every time it's been foiled by, geomagnetic activity happening or some other thing happening where we think we see it and we don't quite see it. We're not quite sure. And it happened again in 2017, and it's an ongoing thing. So it's a really interesting topic. So yeah, you're right, Nathaniel. That might be a good topic to go after.
Yeah, and it would, if we did something, that brought together some of these other data sets, that might strengthen the proposal.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
The ALFSA. So yeah.
Okay, well, it's a little after 5 and I've got a couple appointments to meet yet tonight. I guess, I know what I've got to do to keep the SEQP moving and scoring and all that sort of stuff. That's pretty straightforward. Nathaniel, is there anything you'd like me to take away, or if you want me to think about or do something for next week? I guess I'd like a little direction because we covered a heck of a lot of ground tonight.
I think what I want to see is, I really want to see what Gareth comes up with in terms of the science questions. I'd like to hear from, and in terms of where we're going with the science. So that means going through the HamSci listserv, pulling out those the science questions that were on the HamSci listserv, going through figuring out what we're going to have the postdoc do, which I think I know what we're going to do, but we can talk about that again. But basically make sure we have good direction with the science. I think from Mary Lou, it would be really interesting to hear more about how, like I said, what's the pro-am astronomy, the amateur astronomy community doing that allows them to, work as an effective community and identify good science targets and be effective scientists? Is there something they're doing that we are not, that we should learn from?
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else you can think of, Gary?
No, just the only thing I'm thinking right now is let's make sure this meeting makes it up to YouTube, because I want to listen to it a couple more times and take a lot of notes, because there was a lot of good issues raised tonight.
Okay, I'll make sure I get that up as soon as I can.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, a lot of good meats, a lot of good meat in the
73.
sandwich tonight.
73.
So
Yep.
thanks,
7-3,
everyone.
everybody. Take care.
Gary, get the retail
Thank you.
operation going, all right?
Have no
Yes.
worries.